The old house on Oak Street had been empty for 3 months, and David couldn't bring himself to do anything about it. Every time he drove past the place, memories hit him like a wave. His grandmother had lived there for 40 years, and now it just sat there, waiting for him to make a decision he wasn't ready to make. The rain started around 6 in the evening, and by 7 it was coming down like the sky had cracked open. David had been working late at the office again, trying to avoid going home to his empty apartment. He'd been doing that a lot lately, finding reasons to stay busy, to keep his mind off things he didn't want to think about. As he drove through the downtown area, the wipers on his car could barely keep up with the storm. The streets were flooding, and most people had the sense to stay indoors. But as he stopped at a red light, something caught his eye across the street. There was a woman standing under the broken awning of Miller's Corner store, the one that had been closed for months. She was pressed against the wall, trying to stay dry, but the wind was pushing the rain right at her. What made David's heart skip was what she was holding, a tiny baby, wrapped in what looked like a thin blanket. The woman looked young, maybe in her 20s, with dark hair plastered to her face from the rain. Her jacket was soaked through, and David could see her shivering even from across the street. She kept looking around like she was waiting for someone or trying to figure out where to go next, but it was the way she held that baby that got to him. She had the little one pressed close to her chest, one hand cupped over the baby's head, trying to shield it from the cold rain. The baby was crying, that thin, desperate sound that babies make when they're cold and scared. And the woman, she was crying too, though David could barely tell with all the rain on her face. Something about the whole scene reminded him of his own mother, years ago when times were tough. He remembered being 7 years old, standing in the rain outside their old apartment after they'd been locked out. His mom had held him just like that, protecting him from the storm even when she couldn't protect herself. The light turned green, and cars behind him started honking. David pulled over to the side of the road, his hands shaking a little as he turned off the engine. He sat there for a moment, watching the woman through his windshield. She was bouncing the baby gently, trying to calm it down, but her movements were getting slower, like she was running out of energy. David reached into his back seat and grabbed his umbrella. He'd bought it last month after getting caught in a storm, and he'd been carrying it around ever since. Funny how things work out. Sometimes he got out of the car and jogged across the street, dodging puddles and trying not to slip on the wet pavement. As he got closer, he could see the woman was younger than he'd thought, probably around 25 or so. Her clothes were simple but clean, though they were soaked through now. The baby couldn't have been more than a few months old. "Excuse me," David called out as he approached, opening his umbrella. "Are you okay?" The woman looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes. For a second he thought she might run. Her grip on the baby tightened, and she pressed herself further back against the wall. "I'm sorry," David said quickly, holding up his free hand. "I don't mean to bother you. I just saw you standing here in the rain, and I thought maybe you needed help." The woman studied his face for a moment, like she was trying to decide if he was safe or not. David stayed where he was, not wanting to scare her more than she already was. "I'm fine," she said, but her voice was shaky, and David could tell she was anything but fine. "We're just waiting for the bus." David looked around. The bus stop was 2 blocks away, and he knew the last bus had already come and gone. The downtown route stopped running at 7:30, and it was already past 8. "The buses stopped running about 30 minutes ago," he said gently. "And there's a flash flood warning until tomorrow morning. Most of the roads are getting closed." The woman's face crumpled a little as she looked down at the baby in her arms. The little one had stopped crying but was making those small, tired sounds that babies make when they're exhausted. "Look," David said, stepping closer and holding the umbrella over both of them. "I know you don't know me, and I know this might sound crazy, but I've got an empty house about 10 minutes from here. It's got heat, running water, everything you need. You and the baby could stay there until the storm passes." The woman looked at him like he'd just spoken in a foreign language. "I don't understand," she said. "The house belonged to my grandmother," David explained. "She passed away a few months ago, and I inherited it. I've been meaning to decide what to do with it, but I haven't been able to bring myself to go through her things. It's fully furnished and it's just sitting there empty." He could see the woman was torn between desperation and caution. She was shivering so hard now that her teeth were chattering, and the baby was starting to fuss again. "I know how this sounds," David continued. "Stranger offering help, too good to be true, all that. But I'm not asking for anything in return. I just can't stand here and watch you and your baby freeze in the rain." The woman was quiet for a long moment, studying his face. Finally, she spoke. "Why would you do that? Help someone you don't even know?" David thought about it. "Because someone did the same thing for me and my mom once, a long time ago. And because it's the right thing to do." The wind picked up, and even with the umbrella, the rain was starting to soak through David's jacket. The woman made a decision. "My name is Lisa," she said quietly, "and this is my daughter, Rose." "I'm David," he replied. "And I promise you, I'm just trying to help." Lisa nodded slowly. "Okay," she said. "Okay, yes. Thank you." David led her to his car, keeping the umbrella over them both. He opened the passenger door and waited while Lisa settled herself and the baby inside. Rose had fallen asleep in her mother's arms, exhausted from crying. As David drove through the flooded streets toward Oak Street, he found himself thinking about his grandmother. She'd always told him that the house would know what it was meant for when the time came. He'd never understood what she meant by that, but sitting here now, with Lisa and Rose in his car, he was starting to get an idea. The house had been waiting. He realized, not for him to live in it, not for him to sell it, but for this moment. For the chance to be a home again, to shelter someone who needed it. His grandmother would have liked that. She'd always said that empty houses were the saddest things in the world and that homes were meant to be lived in, not just looked at. When they pulled up in front of the house, David felt something he hadn't felt in months. It wasn't quite peace, but it was close. Maybe this was what his grandmother had been trying to tell him all along. The house on Oak Street looked different in the rain. David had driven past it hundreds of times, but tonight, with Lisa and baby Rose in his car, it felt like he was seeing it for the first time. The old Victorian sat back from the street, surrounded by overgrown bush and a front porch that wrapped around two sides of the building. Lisa pressed her face to the passenger window, trying to see through the rain. "It's beautiful," she whispered, and David felt a little surge of pride, even though he'd done nothing to earn it. "My grandmother always kept it nice," he said, pulling into the driveway. "I've been meaning to take care of the yard, but I haven't had the time." That wasn't exactly true. He'd had the time, but every time he thought about coming here with a lawnmower or pruning shears, something heavy settled in his chest. The house was supposed to be his inheritance, his gift, but it felt more like a burden he couldn't carry. They sat in the car for a moment, engine running, windshield wipers still going. Rose was still asleep in Lisa's arms, and David didn't want to wake her. The baby looked so small and peaceful, her tiny fist curled against her mother's chest. "I should probably tell you," Lisa said quietly, not looking at him. "I don't have anywhere else to go." David turned in his seat to face her. "What do you mean?" Lisa took a deep breath. "We got evicted this morning from our apartment. I couldn't make the rent after." She trailed off, looking down at Rose. "After my husband died," the words hit David like a physical blow. He'd been thinking this was just about getting out of the rain, maybe staying one night until the storm passed. But this was bigger than that. This was about having nowhere to sleep, nowhere to call home. "How long ago?" he asked gently. 3 months, Lisa said. "Car accident. He was coming home from work, and someone ran a red light." Her voice was steady, but David could hear the pain underneath. The medical bills, the funeral costs, everything just piled up. "I tried to keep the apartment, but I couldn't work with Rose being so little, and the daycare waiting lists are so long." David felt something twist in his stomach. 3 months ago, his grandmother had died. 3 months ago, Lisa's husband had died. 3 months ago, both of their lives had changed completely, and now here they were, two strangers trying to figure out how to keep going. "I'm sorry," he said. "I can't imagine how hard that must be." Lisa nodded, still not looking at him. I spent all day walking around, trying to find a shelter with space. But they're all full, and most of them don't take babies anyway. I was sitting in the park when it started raining, and I didn't know what to do. David looked at the house through the windshield. His grandmother's house, with its empty rooms and quiet hallways. You know what? He said, I think my grandmother would have liked you. Lisa finally looked at him, confused. What? She always said that houses were meant to be lived in, that empty houses were sad houses. David smiled. A little. She used to take in stray cats, stray dogs, sometimes stray people. My mom always said Grandma couldn't stand to see anything left out in the cold. He turned off the engine and pocketed the keys. Come on, let's get you two inside where it's warm. The front porch was covered, so they stayed dry while David fumbled with the lock. He hadn't been inside since the funeral, and his hands were shaking a little as he pushed the door open. The smell hit him first, lavender and old wood and something that was just uniquely his. Grandmother's house. Lisa stepped inside and stopped, looking around with wide eyes. The living room was just as David remembered it, flowered wallpaper, comfortable old furniture, family photos on every surface. His grandmother's reading chair was still by the window, with a book open on the side table like she'd just stepped away for a moment. Oh my, Lisa breathed. It's like stepping back in time. David flicked on the lights and the room came to life. Everything was exactly as his grandmother had left it. The throw pillows arranged, just so. The candy dish on the coffee table, even her knitting basket by the fireplace with a half-finished scarf still on the needles. The heat should kick on in a minute, David said, adjusting the thermostat. The kitchen's through there, and there's a bathroom down the hall. Upstairs there are 3 bedrooms, and one of them was set up as a nursery when my cousin's kids used to visit. Lisa was still standing in the doorway, holding Rose like she was afraid to move. I don't understand, she said. Why are you doing this? David looked around the room, at all the familiar things that had been sitting here untouched for months. Honestly, I don't know. But my grandmother always said that when you don't know what to do, you do the next right thing. And right now, the next right thing is making sure you and Rose have a warm, dry place to sleep. He walked over to the mantelpiece and picked up one of the photos, his grandmother holding his cousin's baby, both of them smiling at the camera. She would have brought you inside before I even got the car parked, he said. She would have. Had you fed and settled and probably would have knitted Rose a blanket before bedtime? Lisa finally stepped fully into the room, and David saw some of the tension leave her shoulders. She sounds like she was a wonderful person. She was, David said. She raised me for a few years when my mom was getting back on her feet. This house was always full of people who needed a place to land. Rose started to wake up, making those small sounds that babies make when they're stirring. Lisa swayed gently, trying to keep her calm. There should be some formula in the kitchen, David said. My grandmother always kept it for when the grandkids visited, and there might be some baby clothes in the upstairs closet. My cousin never took all their stuff when the kids outgrew it. Lisa's eyes filled with tears. I can't pay you, she said. I mean, I want to, but I don't have any money right now. Everything I had went to keeping us fed these past few days? David shook his head. I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for you to let me help. But why? Lisa asked again. You don't even know me, David thought about that. Because 3 months ago, I lost the most important person in my life. And I've been walking around since then feeling like nothing matters, like there's no point to anything. But seeing you tonight, being able to help you and Rose, it's the first time in months that I've felt like maybe there is a point. Maybe my grandmother left me this house so I could pass along the same kindness she showed me. Rose was fully awake now, looking around the room with curious eyes. She was a beautiful baby, with dark hair like her mother's and bright, alert eyes. That seemed to take in everything. What do you think, little one? David asked softly. Think you might like it here? Rose made a small cooing sound, and Lisa laughed for the first time since David had met her. It was a good sound, warm and real. I think that's a yes, Lisa said. And I think your grandmother would be proud of you. David felt something loosen in his chest, something that had been wound tight for months. Maybe Lisa was right. Maybe this was what his grandmother had been trying to tell him all along, that the house wasn't meant to be a museum to the past, but a bridge to the future. 2 weeks had passed since that stormy night, and David found himself taking a different route to work every morning. The long way, he told himself, the scenic route. But really, he was driving past Oak Street to check on the house, to see if the lights were on, to make sure Lisa and Rose were still there. He'd been stopping by every few days, usually in the evenings after work. The first few visits had been awkward, him standing in the doorway with grocery bags, Lisa accepting them with quiet thank yous and careful smiles. But something had shifted over the past week. The house felt different now, lived in again. When David knocked on the door that Tuesday evening, he could hear Rose laughing inside. The sound made him smile before he even realized it. Lisa opened the door with Rose on her hip, and both of them looked healthier than they had 2 weeks ago. Lisa's cheeks had more color, and Rose was wearing a little yellow dress that David recognized from his grandmother's collection of baby clothes. "You're early tonight," Lisa said, stepping aside to let him in. "Rose just had her dinner, and she's in one of those moods where everything is funny." David set down the bag of groceries he'd brought and made a face at Rose, who immediately burst into giggles. "What's so funny, little one?" he asked, and Rose reached out her tiny hands toward him. "She's been doing that all day," Lisa said. "I think she likes you." David felt something warm spread through his chest. He'd never been around babies much, but there was something about Rose that made him want to be better, to be the kind of person who deserved that trusting smile. "How was your day?" he asked Lisa, following her into the kitchen. The room looked different than it had 2 weeks ago. Lisa had cleaned and organized everything, and there were fresh flowers on the table. Daisies from the overgrown garden outside. "Good," Lisa said, settling Rose in the high chair that David had found in the basement. "I spent the morning working on your grandmother's garden. I hope you don't mind. It just seemed like such a shame to let all those beautiful plants get choked out by weeds." David looked out the kitchen window. The backyard, which had been a jungle of overgrown grass and tangled bush, now showed signs of careful tending. The flower beds were cleared, and he could see the shapes of his grandmother's rose bush emerging from the chaos. She would have loved that, he said quietly. She spent hours out there every day. "I used to help her when I was little, but I never learned the names of all the plants." Lisa brightened. "I can teach you if you want. I had a garden at our old place, just a small one on the balcony. But your grandmother had some amazing plants out there. There's a whole herb garden by the back fence, and I think those are heirloom tomatoes by the shed." David found himself staying longer that evening, helping Lisa give Rose a bath in the old clawfoot tub upstairs. The baby splashed happily in the warm water, soaking both adults in the process. Lisa had relaxed in a way David hadn't seen before, laughing as Rose tried to grab the soap bubbles. "She loves bath time," Lisa said, wrapping Rose in a towel that had tiny ducks on it. "It's about the only time she sits still." "My grandmother used to give me baths in that same tub," David said. "She'd let me bring my toy boats and I'd pretend I was sailing across the ocean," Lisa smiled. "She really raised you for a while?" David nodded. "When I was 7, my mom went through a rough patch. Lost her job, lost our apartment, couldn't get back on her feet. My grandmother took me in without question. I lived here for almost 2 years while Mom got things sorted out." "That must have been hard," Lisa said, bouncing Rose gently. "Being separated from your mom." "It was," David admitted. "But my grandmother made it feel like an adventure. She'd tell me stories about the house, about all the people who had lived here over the years. She said every room had memories and that I was adding new ones every day." They moved to the nursery, where Lisa had set up Rose's crib by the window. The room was painted pale green, with white furniture and a mobile of wooden animals hanging over the crib. David's grandmother had prepared this room for visits from great-grandchildren, but she'd never lived to see it used. "She's getting so big," David said, watching Lisa tuck Rose into her crib. The baby was already drowsy, her eyelids heavy. 4 months next week, Lisa said softly. Sometimes I can't believe it's been that long since. She trailed off, but David understood. Do you want to talk about him? David asked. Your husband? Lisa was quiet for a moment, watching Rose settle into sleep. His name was Tom, she said finally. We met in college, got married right after graduation. He was a carpenter, loved working with his hands. He was so excited about Rose, spent months building her crib and painting this beautiful mural on the wall of our apartment. She touched the mobile gently, making the wooden animals spin. He never got to see her smile. She was only 6 weeks old when he died, and I keep thinking about all the things he's going to miss. Her first steps, her first words, all of it. David felt his throat tighten. I'm sorry, he said. That's not fair. No, Lisa agreed. It's not, but I can't change it. All I can do is try to be the best mom I can be for her, and hope that somehow he knows she's okay. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching Rose sleep. The baby had kicked off her blanket, and Lisa reached down to cover her again. Can I ask you something? Lisa said as they walked back downstairs. Of course. Why haven't you moved in here? It's such a beautiful house, and it's obvious you love it. David sank into his grandmother's favorite chair, the one by the window, where she used to read. I don't know, he said honestly. Every time I think about it, I just ... I can't. It feels like if I move in, if I change things, then she's really gone, like I'm erasing her somehow. Lisa curled up on the couch across from him. But you're not erasing her. Look around, everything here is still hers. The pictures, the furniture, even the way you talk about her. She's everywhere in this house, but it's different now, David said. With you and Rose here, it feels alive again. Before, it was just ... empty, like a museum. Maybe that's the point, Lisa said gently. Maybe she left you this house not so you could preserve it exactly as it was, but so you could let it grow and change and become something new. Something that still honors her memory, but doesn't get stuck in the past. David looked around the room. Lisa was right. The house did feel different now, but not in a bad way. Rose's baby toys were scattered on the rug. Lisa's book was open on the side table. The kitchen smelled like the soup Lisa had made for dinner. It was still his grandmother's house, but it was becoming something else too. She would have liked. You, he said finally. You remind me of her in some ways. The way you take care of things, the way you see the good in people. Lisa smiled. I hope I get to hear more stories about her. Rose should know about the woman whose house gave us a second chance. As David drove home that night, he realized something had shifted. For the first time in months, he wasn't dreading the empty apartment waiting for him. Instead, he was looking forward to tomorrow evening, to seeing Lisa and Rose again, to helping tend his grandmother's garden and making new memories in the old house. Maybe Lisa was right. Maybe his grandmother had left him the house not to preserve the past, but to build a future. And maybe, just maybe, that future was already beginning. The first snow of winter fell on a Thursday, and David found himself rushing to Oak Street after work, worried about whether the old house's heating system could handle the cold. He'd been meaning to have it checked, but like so many things lately, he'd put it off. When he pulled into the driveway, he could see warm light glowing from every window. Smoke was curling up from the chimney, and the front porch light was on like a welcome beacon. For a moment, he just sat in his car, looking at the house that had never looked more like a home. Lisa answered the door before he could knock. Rose bundled in her arms, wearing a tiny knitted hat. I saw you pull up, she said, stepping aside. To let him in. Perfect timing. I just put the kettle on. The living room was wonderfully warm, and David could smell something delicious coming from the kitchen. Lisa had lit a fire in the fireplace, and Rose was reaching toward the dancing flames with fascination. How's the heat working? David asked, unwrapping his scarf. Like a dream, Lisa said. This old house knows how to keep warm. I've been learning all its little tricks. The radiator in the kitchen makes this clicking sound when it's working hardest, and the one upstairs hums a little tune. David smiled. My grandmother always said the house talked to her. I used to think she was just being silly, but now I think she was right. They settled in the living room with hot tea, Rose playing with her toys on the rug between them. David had brought more baby supplies, diapers, formula, a few new outfits he'd found on sale. He'd been doing this for 2 months now, and it was starting to feel less like charity and more like... Well, he wasn't sure what it felt like. David, Lisa said quietly, not looking at him. I need to talk to you about something. The seriousness in her voice made him tense. What's wrong? I got a call today about an apartment. It's part of a program for single mothers, subsidized housing. There's a waiting list, but they might have something available next month. David felt something. Cold settle in his stomach. That's good news, right? That's what you want. Lisa was quiet for a long moment, watching Rose stack blocks on the floor. I don't know, she said finally. I mean, yes, it's what I thought I wanted. Independence, my own place, not having to depend on anyone else's charity. It's not charity, David said quickly, isn't it? Lisa looked at him then, and he could see the conflict in her eyes. David, you've been taking care of us for 2 months. You pay the utilities, you bring us food, you don't ask for anything in return. What would you call it? David opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. She wasn't wrong. He had been taking care of them, but it didn't feel like charity to him. It felt like taking care of his family. The thought surprised him. When had he started thinking of Lisa and Rose as family? I call it helping, he said finally. I call it doing what's right, but it's not sustainable, Lisa said. You can't keep supporting us forever. You have your own life, your own expenses, and I can't keep accepting your help without giving anything back. Rose had abandoned her blocks and was crawling toward David, babbling happily. He picked her up automatically, settling her on his lap. She grabbed his finger and squeezed it tight. You give back more than you know, he said softly. Before you? 2 came along, I was just going through the motions. Work, sleep, repeat. I couldn't even come into this house without falling apart. Now, now what? David looked around the room, at the fire crackling in the fireplace, at Rose's toys scattered on the rug, at Lisa curled up on the couch with her tea. Now it feels like home again, like it's supposed to. Lisa's eyes filled with tears. But that's not fair to you. You shouldn't have to take care of us just to feel at home in your own house. What if I want to? David asked. What if taking care of you two is the best part of my day? The question hung in the air between them. Rose had fallen asleep in David's arms, her tiny hand still wrapped around his finger. She was getting bigger, more alert, more interactive. She'd started reaching for him when he walked in the door, and her smile when she saw him made his whole day brighter. David, Lisa said carefully, are you saying what I think you're saying? He wasn't sure what he was saying. All he knew was that the thought of Lisa and Rose leaving, of coming home to an empty apartment while this house sat empty too, made him feel sick. I'm saying maybe we should talk about making this arrangement more permanent, he said, more official. Lisa was quiet for a long time. I can't be your charity case forever, she said finally. You're not a charity case, David said. He struggled for the right words. You're the reason this house feels like home again. You're the reason I look forward to coming here every day. You're the reason I can walk through these rooms without feeling like I'm visiting a museum. But I don't pay rent. I don't contribute financially. I'm basically a freeloader. You take care of the house. You've brought the garden back to life. You've made this place feel lived in and loved. That's worth more than money. Lisa shook her head. You don't understand. I need to be able to take care of myself, to take care of Rose. I can't just be dependent on your kindness forever. David stood up carefully, not wanting to wake Rose. He walked to the window and looked out at the snow-covered garden. Lisa had spent weeks that fall preparing the beds for winter, covering the tender plants and mulching the roses. She'd done it with the same care his grandmother had shown, like she was investing in something that would last. What if it wasn't? Just kindness? He asked, not turning around. What if it was something else? What do you mean? David turned back to face her. I mean, what if this isn't just about me helping you? What if it's about us helping each other? What if we're both getting something out of this arrangement? Lisa studied his face. What are you getting out of it? A family, David said simply, a reason to come home. A house that feels alive again. A chance to honor my grandmother's memory by doing what she would have done. And what am I getting? A home, security, someone who cares about you and Rose. Someone who wants to be here, not someone who's just doing their duty. Lisa was quiet for a long moment. You're talking about more than just a living arrangement, she said finally. Maybe I am, David admitted. I know it's complicated. I know we're still figuring out what this is between us. But I also know that I don't want you to leave. I don't want to go back to the way things were before. Rose stirred in his arms, making soft baby sounds. Lisa got up and walked over to them, smoothing her daughter's hair. She loves you, Lisa said quietly. Rose, she lights up when she sees you. She's never done that with anyone except me. I love her too, David said, both of you. The words were out before he could stop them. Lisa looked up at him, surprise and something else in her eyes. David, I know it's too soon, he said quickly. I know we haven't known each other long, and I know your husband hasn't been gone very long. I'm not trying to replace him or rush you into anything. I needed you to know how I feel. Lisa reached up and touched his face gently. Tom would have liked you, she said. He would have been grateful that someone was taking care of us. David felt his throat tighten. I want to keep taking care of you, both of you. Not because you need it, but because I want to. Because this feels right. Even if it's messy? Even if we're still figuring things out? Especially then, David said, the best things in life are usually messy. Lisa smiled through her tears. So what are you suggesting? That we make this permanent? That we become a real family? I'm suggesting we take it one day at a time, David said. But yes, I'm hoping we can become a real family. In whatever way that looks like for us. Rose woke up then, looking between the two adults with sleepy eyes. She reached for her mother, and Lisa took her, but she kept her other hand on David's arm. One day at a time, Lisa repeated. I think I can do that. David felt something settle in his chest, something that had been unsettled for months. Good, he said, because I was really hoping you'd say yes. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the garden and the house in quiet white. Inside, the fire crackled and the old house hummed with warmth and the promise of new beginnings. Spring came early that year, and with it, 1,000 small changes that David had never noticed before. The daffodils his grandmother had planted 20 years ago pushed through the soil in bright yellow clusters. The old apple tree by the back fence burst into bloom. And Rose took her first wobbly steps across the living room floor on a sunny Tuesday morning in March. David had been at work when it happened, but Lisa called him immediately, her voice breathless with excitement. She walked. David, she actually walked. 3 whole steps from the couch to the coffee table. He'd left work early that day, something he'd never done before Rose came into his life. When he got to the house, Lisa was sitting on the floor with Rose between her legs, trying to coax her to walk again. The baby was being stubborn, though, more interested in chewing on her toy blocks than showing off her new skill. Come on, sweetheart, Lisa was saying. Show David what you did today. David got down on the floor with them, holding out his hands. Come here, little one. Let me see those fancy new walking skills. Rose looked at him with those bright eyes that reminded him so much of her mother's, then pushed herself up on unsteady legs. She took 1 step, then another, then tumbled forward into David's arms with a giggle that made his heart skip. There's my girl, he said, spinning her around until she shrieked with laughter. Look at you go! It was a perfect moment, the kind David would remember for the rest of his life. But underneath the joy, there was something else, a conversation. They'd been putting off for weeks, a decision that couldn't wait much longer. The subsidized housing had come through. Lisa had gotten the call 3 days ago, and they'd been dancing around it ever since. She was supposed to give them an answer by the end of the week. We need to talk, Lisa said that evening after Rose was asleep. They were sitting in the garden, watching the last light fade from the sky. David had strung lights between the trees, and the whole backyard glowed with warm, soft light. I know, David said. About the apartment, Lisa nodded. It's a good opportunity. 2 bedrooms, safe neighborhood, near a good daycare. Everything I thought I wanted when this all started. But? David asked, because he could hear the hesitation in her voice. But I don't want it, Lisa said simply. I want to stay here, with you. I want Rose to grow up in this house, to play in this garden, to learn about your grandmother from you. I want us to be a family. David felt relief wash over him like a warm wave. Are you sure? Because once you turn down the housing, you go back to the bottom of the waiting list. It could be years before another opportunity comes up. I'm sure, Lisa said, but only if you're sure too. Really sure. Because this isn't just about me anymore. Rose is getting attached to you. If this doesn't work out, if you change your mind, I won't change my mind, David said firmly. Lisa, I've been thinking about this for months. I want you to stay. I want us to make this official, to make it real. What does that mean exactly, making it official? David took a deep breath. He'd been practicing this conversation in his head for weeks, but now that the moment was here, his heart was racing. It means I want to put both your names on the deed to the house. It means I want Rose to know this is her home, not just a place she's staying temporarily. It means I want us to be partners in this, equals, not me helping you out of charity. Lisa stared at him. You want to put my name on the deed? David, this house is worth. It's worth nothing if it's empty, David interrupted. My grandmother didn't leave me this house so I could live in it alone or sell it to strangers. She left it to me so I could fill it with love and laughter and family. That's what you and Rose have given me. But what if we don't work out? What if this thing between us doesn't last? David reached for her hand. Then we'll figure it out together, like adults. But Lisa, I'm not going anywhere. I love you. I love Rose. I want to marry you someday, when you're ready. I want to adopt Rose, if you'll let me. I want to give her brothers and sisters to play with in this garden. Lisa's eyes filled with tears. You want all that? I want all of it, David said. The whole messy, complicated, beautiful package. I want to teach Rose to ride a bike in this driveway. I want to help her with homework at that kitchen table. I want to walk her down the aisle in this garden someday, if she wants that. And what do you want from me? David smiled. I want you to be my partner. I want us to build something together. I want you to help me turn this house into the kind of home my grandmother always dreamed it could be. Lisa was quiet for a long moment, looking around the garden she'd spent months nurturing back to life. Your grandmother really would have wanted this, wouldn't she? She would have loved you, David said. She would have loved watching Rose grow up here. She always said this house was meant for children's laughter. And what about your family? Your mom? Your siblings? What will they think about you giving away half their inheritance to a woman you've known for 6 months? David had thought about this too. I already talked to them. I told them about you and Rose, about what's been happening here. My mom cried. She said it sounded exactly like something Grandma would have done. My sister wants to meet you. They're happy for me, Lisa. They can see that I'm happy in a way I haven't been since Grandma died. And you're really sure about this, about all of it? David stood up and pulled Lisa to her feet. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, but I need to know how you feel. Really feel. Not just about the house or the security, but about me, about us. Lisa looked up at him, and in the soft light from the garden lights, she looked almost ethereal. I love you, she said simply. I didn't think I could love anyone again after Tom died. I thought that part of my heart was broken forever. But you've been so patient, so kind, so good to both of us. You've given us more than just a home. You've given us hope. But I'm scared, Lisa admitted. I'm scared of depending on someone. Again, of letting myself believe in happy endings. I'm scared of what happens if I let myself love you completely and then lose you too. David cupped her face in his hands. I can't promise that nothing bad will ever happen, he said. But I can promise that I'm not going anywhere by choice. I can promise that I'll fight for us, for this family we're building. And I can promise That even if something does happen to me, this house will always be yours and Rose's. That's why I want your name on the deed." Lisa leaned into his touch. "Tom would have liked you," she said softly. "He would have been grateful that someone was taking care of us, loving us the way he would have wanted." "I hope so," David said, "because I plan to spend the rest of my life making sure you and Rose know how loved you are." Lisa stood on her toes and kissed him then, soft and sweet under the garden lights. When they broke apart, she was smiling through her tears. "So we're really doing this?" she asked. "We're really going to be a family?" "We already are a family," David said. "We have been since that night in the rain. Now we're just making it official." They went inside to call the housing office, to turn down the apartment that Lisa no longer wanted. Rose was sleeping peacefully in her crib, one tiny fist curled under her chin. She looked so small and perfect, and David felt his heart swell with love for this little girl who had taught him what it meant to be a father. 6 months later, on a warm September day, David and Lisa were married in the garden behind the house on Oak Street. Rose toddled down the makeshift aisle in a yellow dress, carrying a basket of flower petals that she scattered with great enthusiasm. The guest list was small, just family and close friends, but the happiness was enormous. David's grandmother's house was full of laughter again, full of the sounds of a family being lived in and loved. The nursery upstairs was getting ready for a new occupant. Lisa was 3 months pregnant, and they'd just found out it was a boy. Rose was going to be a big sister, and she seemed to understand that something exciting was coming. As David stood in his grandmother's garden, holding his new wife's hand and watching Rose chase butterflies between the flower beds, he thought about that stormy night almost a year ago. He'd thought he was just helping a stranger out of the rain. He'd had no idea he was really finding his family, his future. His home, the house on Oak Street, had been waiting all along, just like his grandmother had said it would. Waiting for the right moment, the right people, the right story to begin. And now, finally, it was complete.